another.
I'm sick of seeing doctors up there.
Huh?
I said, I'm sick of seeing doctors up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's even will make you sick.
She's one of my school teachers.
Oh, really? Hi, I love teachers.
Sometimes it feels like nobody else does.
Well, you
Right.
know what? Shame on us. How did we get where we were without teachers? Thank you.
Okay, are we all set to go?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, can everyone hear me? Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming out to our fourth public hearing for the Providence Ward Boundaries meeting. Good. Madam Clerk, we have with us tonight in attendance Councilman Narducci, Councilman Harris, Member Freeman,
Councilor Miller.
and Councilor Miller. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, we do have Susanna Skolnick from the Law Department attending on their behalf.
Thank you. Also in the audience, I'd like to thank Councilman Anthony for joining us, and Councilman Vargas is also here in attendance. Thank you, councilors, for joining us.
And Madam Chair, on Zoom, we have Pro Temp Espinal and Majority Leader Taylor with us.
Welcome, Lieutenant Espinal and Majority Leader Taylor. We also have with us in attendance Ryan Taylor this evening of Election Data Services, who is our consultant. So tonight is a very exciting night, and I'm really glad that so many of you chose to join us. The committee has been hard at work for a year and several months. And so much exciting things happen right near the end. I'd also like to welcome Councilman Correa this evening. Thank you, Council. You see before you here on our easels 4 different proposed maps. These are draft. These are not finalized. But our committee heard from the public. We heard from city councilors who know their communities and their neighborhoods quite well and their constituents. And based on that, and based on the 6 criteria that we must follow in the city charter, and our committee's goals listed in our values document, and sort of the conversations that we've had over the year, all of those things came together to give us 4 examples. I'm really happy with the way that Election Data Services worked with our committee and with our community. We know that there is still more that we can look at. We know that we still have feedback yet to gather from the community, and so I'm really glad so many of you here tonight hopefully will share that with us. We also have an additional public hearing on the 2nd, which is Wednesday. That is Zoom only. You can sign up to participate with the clerk's office. That email is
cityclerk@providenceri.gov.
cityclerk@providenceri.gov. And after that meeting, we will have a short, after the rise of that meeting, we'll have a short committee meeting in which we will publicly accept the 4 draft maps. That's just sort of pro forma for making sure that we get them on the record, that we have accepted them, and we may have a short conversation about them at that time. Then on the 7th, which is next Monday, we have a committee meeting. And at that committee meeting, we will vote a map out of committee to the full city council. So we're really looking forward to feedback, because we might have additional sort of modifications and changes to some of the maps you see tonight for that meeting on the 7th. So please know that these are not the final. We are still very much interested in your feedback. I look forward to hearing that this evening. Do any of my fellow committee members have anything that they would like to say this evening? Before we... No? I'd like to turn it over to Ryan Taylor. He's going to introduce the maps and give us some more information. And then after Ryan finishes, we will have time for the public comment period. We have been limiting public comment to 3 minutes per person. We'll do our best to answer your questions if you do have them. If not, we will take your email address and respond via email or phone call, whichever might be easier to get your question answered. So Ryan, here you go.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to echo a lot of what she said. These maps are proposals. They are not final, and they are looking for feedback. This is an exciting day. We can always spur the most conversation about the potential plans when we do release proposals, and that is today. I wanted to do 4, and the reason was we took in a lot of different testimony, verbal, not just at the city works meetings, but also like I remember a lot of things that was mentioned to me during the state process. We took in a lot of testimony that was verbal and also submitted, emailed, texted. And I wanted to look at all the possibilities. And that's why I basically brought 4 different maps to your attention. They are all viable. All the deviations are under 10%, as we've said. A ward needs to be less than 5% over the ideal population or above 5% under. Recall that wards 12 and 15 as existing were both too large population-wise. So you have seen where they have shifted to, as well as wards 13 and 11. 13 and 9 were both underpopulated, and you can see where they have gained population to be viable again. Citywide, these plans will work for population, but we want to see how they can work even better. In proposal A, I wanted to look at what the draft would be. We made the least change necessary to make the plan viable. That means just enough shifting to where no district was too big or too small, and also no precinct that was under 300 eligible voters. You can see in some areas there was a bit of change, and some there were far between. Wanted to do a little bit better by the city election department in Ward B by making a little bit more change to where they wouldn't have to have a precinct under 400 eligible voters if possible. As you can see, in the first one, we were able to say a minimum number would be 76 precincts. We were able, by going up to that 400, we were able to say you don't need to have any more than 75 precincts for city elections. Each precinct that we do not forced on the city, saves a lot of money in administering elections and a lot of the needs to find workable polling places and staff. So that was, for A and B, I was just kind of a numbers exercise. How can I make the changes for these roles? Proposal C is where I started bringing a lot of my notes in and feedback and testimony to say, we can make some more changes and we can try and follow all of the testimony as we receive that we can. Maybe won't be able to get as many precincts, but at least there are some some things are closer to some of the principles of the charter, such as I did try and get some community centers in some wards where they're working before. And split apart and keep more neighborhoods whole, or try and work with the characteristics of a neighborhood so that the wards better reflected who was living there. That's a lot of our testimony had to do with, you want your districts and the city government to reflect properly the neighborhoods and the residents. You'll see more of that in Ward C, Proposal C. And then in Proposal D was the biggest change. I kind of had a little bit of a reimagining of how neighborhoods work with the wards. You can see like Ward 11 has the entirety of South Providence and Wiggins Village. Ward 12 has the entirety of Oak Valley neighborhood and a lot of Smith Hill and is no longer in College Hill, which is a much different population than who lives in Smith Hill and the Valley. The Elmhurst neighborhood is no longer represented by 3 wards. They're focused on 2, which means they have a stronger say in who represents those wards. And also it has the lowest total deviation of just 9%. The largest non-Hispanic Black ward, we were able to get up over 20% in Ward 11. And it has the lowest number of required precincts for the city to create polling places for. That's, as you can see, when you bring different values in to the plan, it changes some of the specifics factors. And I am all ears to see how you assess those changes, whether you want me to kind of interpret some things in a way that might make it easier to understand. Yes. And I'm looking forward to that. I'll be taking notes, and I expect probably we'll be able to do a revised draft or 2 for the committee consideration and for the public consideration probably before the next meeting on the 7th. So at this point, I'll open it up to public testimony.
I think we have one member of the committee who would like to speak first.
Okay.
Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate that. I hope I'm being picked up by the microphone. I can try to speak more loudly. Thank you. Tina. Thank you. I hope you all can hear me.
Turn it on now.
Oh, that would help, wouldn't it? Now you can hear me. That was embarrassing. Thank you. First of all, thank you to Ryan and EDS and our chairwoman Jessica. Thanks to everyone here for showing up. It's great to see a lot of friendly faces people I've seen from around the city before. So thank you all for being here. I'm really glad that we have 4 maps to react to. 10 years ago, I believe there were only 2 maps that people got to react to. And then what was passed or something still hadn't seen until the day of. So being able to have 4 options is really good. It's an improvement over the process from 10 years ago in terms of being transparent. I'm very happy to hear that, to see these. What I will say is that I was a little surprised by maps C and D. And I hear what Ryan's saying loud and clear about trying to take in some of the testimony that was heard and be a little more creative with it and try to lower those deviations. I will say that with regard to both of those, I think the resulting was, or the end result was something that we didn't hear in testimony. Like, for example, both C and D divide downtown into multiple wards, and I don't remember anyone testifying about that. I understand from why that happened and trying to move things around, but I would say that that is something that we did not hear testimony in support of, and I would say that doing so went afoul of some of the values we tried to express as a committee. So I'm a little skeptical of those 2, if I'm being honest, to start this off. But I really do thank you for what you're trying to do here, especially as we're looking at B, C, and D, respecting one of the things that was brought up a lot by members of the public and by Councilman Correa, who's here with us today, about ensuring that every single ward has at least one civic space, one civic building in it, so that a councilman can have, or a council person can have a neighborhood meeting within their own ward. That's an important thing, and so I'm glad that 3 of these maps tried to achieve that in each ward. We put a whole lot of effort into this, and really excited to hear what the public has to say about it.
Okay, that's fine. I can follow up with that. The downtown was a dilemma, you could say. We did hear testimony. You might not have heard specific testimony about put more Dorothy into downtown. You might not have heard that. But one thing we did hear was that Benefit Street needs are different than Smith Street needs. And if like Ward A, 12, Ward 12, I'm sorry, proposal A, Ward 12 doesn't leave Benefit Street. It doesn't solve that testimony that we heard. Was able to bring it into 312 out of Benefit Street, College Hill in the proposal B. But that's a big population along Benefit. I think of all the RISD students that are compiled there, that were counted there. And the effect of that was to, for Ward 2 to take on that population, it needed to have Ward 3 come into areas that probably Ward 3 residents aren't expecting, or Ward 2 residents aren't expecting Ward 3 to come into. If you can see, if you do split up downtown, like in proposal C, Ward 3 is not forced to depopulate the northern part of Ward 2. There are, so each value has cause and effect. So I just wanted to make that kind of clear that the Benefit Street area, very high population, and our hands are tied very much if we keep downtown whole. I do show that it can happen, but I just want people to see what effect it is. And that's either not having Ward 12, it's either keeping Ward 12 in College Hill or having 3 grow a lot into Ward 2. There's the 2 effects of it.
Do any of the other committee members have comments or questions?
Not at this time.
Yeah.
Well, I'll wait.
Great. Okay.
Committee.
So I have 4 people signed up to speak, but if you would like to speak, we'd be happy to have you. So I'm going to read the 4 first, and then after the end, I will ask if anyone else would like to speak and sign up. Up, I have Councilwoman Anthony. And maybe should we give them this mic?
I wouldn't mind using the maps if I can. I think that will walk over
Yeah.
here.
No, it won't go that far.
This one might.
You can get it, Ziggy? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Just might reach.
So, what's that?
Hers might-
That one might reach. Yeah.
Yeah.
Slide this down. We got a lot of slack on that guy.
Councilwoman, if you could describe which map you're talking about?
Well, I'd first like to talk about C.
Okay.
Okay. Move it for- twice the front.
Let me go. My name is Helen Anthony. I am the councilwoman from Ward 2. And first of all, I will say again, as I have said in the past, that I think the process has been excellent. And I thank you all on the committee, that it's been open, transparent, fair. I think wonderful leadership from Jess Signa. I'm very appreciative. And I think that Ryan has done an excellent job with election day of services and being responsive. So I just understood exactly what has been going on. Every piece is a new piece for me, but I was the one who came and asked for, I'm coming down here, on map C. My 2 missions in representing my ward was to reunite the Patterson Park neighborhood. The neighborhood at the last in 2012 was split in half on Eagle Street, but also to reunite Benefit Street here because half of the street is in Ward 2 and half is in Ward 12. And I think it's very hard for the Ward 12 counselor to represent Smith Hill, which is quite different, and all the way over on this side. So I really appreciate the fact when I saw C that this was that I was listened to and that this is a possible solution. What I didn't understand until tonight was this is causing a division in this area, in the downtown. And I understand now why that is. So, you know, as I said before, I think it's hard because you want to reunite some of your communities of interest. On the other hand, at what cost? And so the cost is significant for me. I'm just going to say Ward 2, I'm representing my ward. When you turn around and look at, you know, this jog out here into Blackstone. Now, Blackstone is quite a large community of interest. We have already lost a lot of last redistricting. We lost a lot of area to 3, and I'm very, very hesitant to lose any more on this. I mean, with the exception of a small couple of blocks, even in D, that amount of loss would be a tremendous loss for my neighborhood. So again, I'm just in one of those situations where, you know, I understand what the implications of accommodating my interest on 2, but I think dividing the downtown is probably not the best thing for the city. I would be back toward to the proposal A. I would keep, because of the significant number of students that registered, 1,300 in one block. It's going to throw all the numbers off. It's just crazy. So I am just saying I'm willing to keep my little, give up Patterson Park, you know, keep this as it is without giving up my Blackstone Boulevard. So it's just one of those processes. I think it's fascinating. I didn't understand the ramifications of what I was asking for in terms of the downtown. So I am saying that, you know, hard on C, I get what I want, but I'm not at the cost of the rest of the city. So I'm going to be arguing vehemently to keep my Ward 2 without giving either this amount or this amount on D to Ward 3, because it really is going to devastate the Blackstone Boulevard neighborhood. So I want to thank you for your time and process. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Very much appreciate it. Does anyone have any reaction? Next, we have Sharon Steele.
Over there.
Yes, and you can use this. And please tell us which map you're talking about if you're going to talk to a specific map.
May I take this?
Of course. And Ms. Steele, please state your name for the record.
Sharon Steele, President of the Jewelry District Association, 95 Chestnut Street.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you to all the council people I see this evening. Very nice to see you all. And let me first say thank you to Councilwoman Anthony, because she gets it. Unfortunately, I don't think other people have really gotten it. And that's what I want to talk about. So last week, I provided testimony to discuss how the Jewelry District defines its community of interest. We attempted to accept our charge and we drew a map. Today, to my surprise, I viewed the maps online and determined the following. How could this consultant violate his own dictates? And maps C and D do exactly that. They violate your own principles. The maps, those 2 maps are the antithesis of what you asked us to do, which is to separate a very important community of interest, okay? It is totally inappropriate for you to determine that Ward 13 should grow into downtown. Ward 13 consists of 2 major residential neighborhoods with a few streets of retail and commercial. Downtown is a federal historic district that shouldn't be divided, as it contains the city's central business district. If in fact you followed your own rules, it should be obvious that the areas north, west, and south of Ward 13 are clearly the communities of interest to Ward 13. Whereas downtown is clearly not that. You violated your own principles, and some of us are here to ensure that this is not to allow to happen. Though these two maps may in fact work for population, they work for nothing else. And it is clearly very important, given the compressed time that we have, that this is remedied. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Very much appreciate it. Next, I have Doug Victor.
Mr. Victor, if you could just state your name for the record and let us know which map you'll be speaking on.
My name is Doug Victor, and I live in the Elmwood neighborhood. And I gave testimony for keeping neighborhoods together. And the last time that this body met, and also pointing out that it still cannot be just a numbers game. And so it's a difficult task, and one that, as Councilwoman Anthony said, we're all learning as it comes forward. And so I'm actually very excited to see maps C and D. Excited from the perspective that it gives us some concrete things, some boundaries to talk about and debate about. My concern is that this process is so compressed that it doesn't give us sufficient time to do the kind of deeper dive into this, because, you know, I personally, you know, I really believe that we have some neighborhoods that have been divided historically in our city, and for reasons that I haven't been able to determine. I've done some research on this and have questioned why. One is the Elmwood neighborhood and one is the South Providence neighborhood, and I'm sure there are others. But then I see that C and D both divide downtown. So I'm saying, where is the equity? Equity needs to be not just placed in one or two neighborhoods, but needs to be worked in such a way that every neighborhood is treated with the same measure of equity. You know, I think my original request for the Elmwood and South Providence neighborhood to please look at that was not then to bring potential harm to other neighborhoods. So I implore you, there's a time constraint here. It's very unfortunate. And it means that whatever this body decides and goes to city council, and there'll be debate at city council, you can believe that. And what happens if city council does not approve based on equity? So it's fair for everyone. And I'm not quite sure, given the givens, how that can be possible in the time frame we have set before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next, I have Alfred Jeffries. Hi, Al. So please state your name and your address.
And my name is Alfred Jeffries. I live at 1 Potter Drive in Providence. And just for your information, it is in the South Elmwood neighborhood. Okay? I have this.
And then if you're going to talk about a specific map, just tell us which map you're talking to.
I want to refer to map A. Okay, here we have map A. Here we have map A, and here's South Elmwood and each neighborhood off just to the west of our Williams Park. Councilman Taylor lives there, so he represents Ward 8. But in some of these other maps, South Elmwood is in District Ward 9, and sometimes in Ward 10. But then Councilman Taylor wouldn't be living in the district he represents. Keep that in mind.
So one of the 6 criteria for the ward boundaries in our charter is that we are to not consider where the incumbent lives. We are to be
But if he's
agnostic
going to
of that.
represent Ward 8, he's not living in that district. Is that fair to say?
You can say it, but we are not to consider it.
He's not living in these other maps. He's not living in the district he represents. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. So as I've said at the start of previous meetings, we have 6 criteria by which we must follow. They are in the charter. The final,
Just, if that was to happen, then you would have a vacant seat in Ward 8, and you would have 2 council people in Ward 9, meaning, stop me if I'm wrong, Councilman Vargas and Councilman Taylor.
it's.
And I understand the charter and all that.
8 is Councilwoman Castillo.
I mean, Castillo.
I'm sorry.
Castillo.
Yeah, 9 is. Yeah.
Right.
So it would not be vacant. What would happen is at the November election, that's when things change. So the wards stay the same until the election.
Right.
So the person will register to vote. Again, we are to be agnostic to where council people live. As you can tell, when we were drawing these maps, we stayed true to that part of the charter. I was not aware that the council person might have been in a different district based on these maps. We have tried very hard to make sure that we do not know where people live, because that's not the rule. The rule is to make sure that we follow the guidance of the charter and some of the tenements that we have stated as being really important. And again, it was not done intentionally or unintentionally. It was completely unintentional because that's part of the way the process works. So, thank you. Any other comments?
No, but I think Mr. Bucci.
Yes, yeah. I just wanted, I didn't.
I don't think I need the mic.
Can you
You
just,
have to, sir, you have to, you have to come forward.
Population.
Sir, you have to come forward and state your name and address.
Robert Bucci, Shepherd Avenue. My question pertains to, I'm looking at some data that says the population increase was about 13,000 last census. Now, while I understand that people move, right, but I'm also told that Providence has a housing shortage, so it's kind of reasonable to assume that people moving one place, people move back into a different place. So I have a question. Besides population, what would you say was the key variable, the second most weighted variable in determining this line?
The voting rights act, no,
Right, I know, I know, right, right. So you're taking into account what specifically are you talking about here? About racial composition, is that the second most common?
that was, yeah, we're going around all the voting
Okay,
rights.
just want to clarify that. And earlier there was a comment about certain areas of town saying that there was residents and then there was business community. But we're really solely based upon residents. Day trippers and everything, they don't have a vote in the city of Providence, correct?
You've got to be a resident.
Right, okay, that's all. That's fine.
Does anyone else from the committee have comments or? Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak? Sure. Yep. Please come forward and state your name and address.
My name is Wayne Woods. My address is 124 North Street. I just have, I don't want to speak about the map. I just have two questions that I want to address to the panel. One, how do the residents feel the proposed redistricting lines? Is there a specific window of time when that needs to happen? And two, in the event of the John Lewis Voting Act, the John Lewis Voting Right Act passed, how will Providence propose redistricting maps to be effective?
For the first question, I believe that after the city council.
So there's a timeline. I'm gonna take off my mask so I can, for better or worse, we are in this timeline from the charter. So we got this week, these proposals still live in this committee. And residents are encouraged to come to the hearing, to send an email through the website, to give feedback to this committee based on the proposals as they come out, as they come to us and as they come through the city. On next week, the committee will send a proposal to the full city council. And then the clock starts for the city council to hold a public hearing. So that's a whole other process by which residents can participate, can talk to their council people, can do all of the things that make civic participation great. As far as I know, and I would look to the clerk to correct me if I'm wrong, there is no like individual right of appeal, right? So city council will hold a hearing, and then city council will make the final vote on the redistricting, and we got to do that before May 1st.
Okay, I'll just ask this. Last week, a lot of people addressed their concerns and they had a lot of questions, but I know this panel could not answer any of the questions. When will we get feedback from the questions from last week and the previous meetings?
I mean, I feel like we had a great conversation last week. I'm happy
But
to
you didn't
address.
answer none of the questions that the people asked. You did not address. You did not address none of the questions.
The questions
You said
were,
these will get back to us. That was supposed to be presented this week, if I'm not mistaken. That's what he told us.
Is there a specific question that you?
Well, you recorded it. You should know. You recorded everybody last week. You know what questions that were asked. You were supposed to give us feedback. I asked my questions already.
Okay.
Give an example. Give her example. Give it. Sorry.
Give her an example. Okay, with the maps and like I said, I live in Ward 11, so with the maps, I know that the percentages went right when they were saying that there were more Hispanics that lived in Ward 11 than blacks. I know that's not accurate. And we know the map the numbers did not add up in that 10-year span. Plus, like they were saying last week, which makes sense, we was in the middle of a pandemic. The last 2 years, the census, the numbers on the census didn't add up because people didn't come out. So how do you explain all that?
I'll address two factors of the question. One is the data shows that people did come out. No demographic organization that studies trends thought Rhode Island was going to keep its second congressional district, but it did because people did come out to be counted. So there is data that shows the opposite. There was high participation in the census throughout the state. The other question is, you bring some local knowledge of where you live. However, like Ward 11 is a big area, and one block might have have a different character than 8 blocks over, whereas the district's like 20 blocks long. As a ward, we counted up all the blocks that make up that ward and presented the findings. We can't make up new census data. We have to go with what the legal public law data showed us, and that is what we are presenting to you.
Yeah, but as far as I'm concerned, I know the numbers don't add up. I've been living in Ward 11 for 43 years. Okay, and I can tell you from experience from living here, the numbers don't add up. But again, like I said, I'm addressing my concerns, and I'm pretty sure other people who had questions, and you recorded all the questions last week, they're still not getting feedback. We're coming to this meeting, we're giving our input, but we're not getting the feedback that we're supposed to get. Thank you.
But the reason I'm speaking up is because I represent Ward 11. And I do know that a lot of concerns that come out of Ward 11 is historical. And so a lot of this pushback and doubt have a lot to do with previous, how redistricting have been done. I believe that one of the things, and I can be frank enough to say with this committee, whether it was a question, whether it was a statement, it's somewhere reflected in these maps, some way or the other. It turned into like, I say numbers, data, information, whatever the case may be. The purpose of these maps is for tonight, to be out for tonight, is for us to jumpstart a conversation about what we want our communities to look like and where we live and how we feel in our communities. So these maps are not permanent. They're not drawn. Hopefully tonight we'll walk away with even more information based on the comments that were made with the maps that were, that we have brought in as a draft. So hopefully tonight we can walk away with even more information about what do you care about in your neighborhoods. And I think, Wayne, that's basically what you were delivering. It wasn't so much as your account of the census. I don't know, you may have done the census, you may have went to door. I didn't do it, I don't really know. But I do know the census is based on how our population grows in each neighborhood. It could be door to door, one house, it could be an apartment building. We have a lot of those in our neighborhood. But I don't believe you were ignored. I just believe that the information may have been reflected in these maps. And with these maps, if there's something in the maps that you feel really strong that wasn't picked up, that'd be really good between tonight and Wednesday, to be able to think about that, think about what you see that you don't feel like the house that you live in is the house that you should be living in, based on some of the concerns about division and equity along the way. So think about those kind of things as you're looking at the map and saying, okay, does this really reflect the neighborhood 43 years, 43 or 48, 46? 43, okay, years that you've lived in that space. I'm saying that because I'm learning as I go. This is nothing that I know a lot about, but I do know that we're trying to reflect something. These maps tonight is only to get us to start thinking about maps. Is that fair? Is it okay to say? Well, okay, I don't, no, that's okay, but I just wanted to say that because I live in Ward 11 and representing Ward 11 it has grown. We are not hugely populated, but we do have some growth here. Just to let you know, we do have the growth. There you.
Member Shannon, do you have-
Oh, there's more from the public. Okay.
Yeah.
Let them go first.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to come forward? I think you, sir, were first. You want to come state your name, your address, and then if you're going to talk about a specific map, please point to that.
My name's Patrick Ward. I live at 55 Pocasset Avenue in Silver Lake. I've been a resident there for 13, 14 years. It's about all the maps in general, especially the 15th ward. It seems like this chunk here, about a third of the ward is being absorbed into either the 12th ward or the 13th ward, 13th ward, 13th ward. And that's a part of my community that's a strong arts district in the city of Providence. And it's always made me very proud. Steel Yard is down there, the Waterfire Arts Complex. Recently, Farm Fresh Rhode Island has entered the neighborhood. And it's one of the most vibrant sections of the 15th ward. And it seems to be consistently gone in every single map. And I was just wondering what the thought process was behind that.
Thank you very much for pointing that out. Ward 15 was one of the 2 districts in the city that was too big and needed to shrink. And so the question was, where does it shrink from? Ward 13 was a district that needed to grow in size. So there was what you could kind of see was 15 when it needs to shrink, kind of has a little vacuum effect of pulling a district that needs to grow into it. And because consistently 15 now would go up to Atwell's Ave as a dividing line. If you have kind of not if you know what kind of needs to shrink, if there was a better dividing line than Atwell's Ave, I would love to hear.
What is it, the dividing line, Route 10?
Between.
There's train tracks, there's a highway
That
there. That's a strong barrier.
It is strong, but Ward 13 needed to go to another part of the city, and it was bounded on 3 sides by a highway. So it was just where was the most viable place for it to cross and then take in population that was fit the ward. Ward 13 needs to grow and 15 needs to shrink. That kind of prompts some of the changes in those maps.
After the Q&A session, could I see the number differences, please?
Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
I just gave Patrick the deviation map. I know many of you have seen that before. We might be able to round up some copies if folks want to see that again. Thank you, Patrick. I know someone else had their hand raised from the community. I think the woman in the pink was.
Thank you, guys. Rebecca Bucci, I live at 44 Smart Street. I should have looked this up before I came, just it's a quick question. So the census should have changed, like districting for tracks and block routes and things like that. Did these take that into account, or did the new maps like potentially separate tracks or block routes that impact things like federal funding, the way that crime is analyzed, stuff like that? Thank you.
The building blocks were the census block level. Tracks kind of tend to stay the same over year from year, and block groups try and match neighborhood. But the census block is the best way to construct a ward. And there's not going to be changes in funding.
So the new boundaries don't cut tracks, is my question.
They do. They always have. blocks make up block groups,
Yeah, no, I got you.
and block group makes up tracks.
So, so they're, my point just is, was that factored into it? Like, why separate a block group that wasn't separated before, or a block that wasn't separated before, on a draw those boundaries that are
It's,
defined by like another?
we had more about, we put a lot more emphasis in neighborhoods, which sometimes align with block groups, but not always.
But to be fair to like the feds, that's neighborhoods.
So census blocks are the lowest level of geography for the census, and those change every decade. So they look completely different than they did last time. And then what happens is from that things grow to different levels. So a block is the lowest level. We do not cut blocks in half. Blocks then are grouped into block groups, and then block groups or grow into census tracts. So we do not build our census tracts because that's too big. That's too big.
You're not dissecting.
We do not dissect, no, we do not dissect blocks. That's not really viable with people to do that.
Right, because we don't know how big half of one block is versus the other half. But we do know how many people live in a full block.
I believe, the gentleman in the green jacket, did you have that?
My name's Junior, living Wade Street, Fox Point. Yeah. Two questions. The first is about process. So I thought I heard you say that out of this committee, one map will come out to the city council, or I wasn't clear if I heard that correct. Okay, and so you all will send that map in a week's time. And after today, how many more opportunities do you have for input? And then I just have like a process question. So especially for like the big changes for districts 1 and 11 between A and G, I'm just wondering what the conversations were like in the committee and how you all chose to make the changes that you did.
Did you say 1 and 11?
Yeah, so yeah, the changes between 1 and 11, maps A and B.
I believe we're still using a 595 between those two words and all that.
One.
Oh, you mean 1 and 13?
No, so 1 changes
Between A and B, you think?
between A and B.
Yeah, the big difference is.
Downtown. Yeah, and then 11 changes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering what the conversations were like, how you all decided to make the changes that you did.
The big question was what to do with downtown. If we do maintain it all in one word, it does limit what you can do with the rest of the east side of Providence. Either two things show that they had to happen, either Ward 12 stays on Benefit Street, or Ward 3 travels farther into the Blackstone neighborhood. If you follow the boundaries of 3 as it goes down to 95, and then down the Meshasik River to the Water Place, and then taking all downtown, and then all the east side, that is 11 people less than the maximum population size of 3 wards. It's about over 40,000 people. And so your hands are very, very tied if you keep Ward 1 downtown all in Ward 1. But we did want to show that was possible, but that there was no effect to that. So I wanted to show that, yes, if we keep downtown in Ward 1, but then if you had it into 2 wards, then it allowed for some flexibility elsewhere on the east side. The question with Ward 11 was who should be in Ward 11? You can see as it progresses and through the letters, it has fewer west end residents and more south side residents as you go from A to B. And you'll see that, and then you also see that the non-Hispanic Black population of Ward 11 increases as it gains more of South Providence and less of West
the west end.
I think that there was a yes.
How's it going? My name is Matt Loveland from 27 Candace Street in Ward 12. So today I want to talk about this region in particular. So the gentleman from what's it called? South, what's it called?
Silver Lake.
Silver Lake, sorry, yeah. Silver Lake talks about this region, Sims Avenue, becoming a new vibrant area. And I really don't think it should be a part of Federal Hill and Ward 13. I think they should come down to like right here and take over more of the west end. This area isn't even connected to Ward 13 by walking. You have to go over this freeway to Federal Hill and you can't really even walk on it. I really think that this area should stay to Ward 12 or to Ward 15. That's my opinion.
You're talking about the valley?
Talking the valley area, right here, there's a steel yard, there's Revival Brewery, there's Farm Fresh. There's this area over here too, that just approved a 350 unit luxury apartment complex to be built right here on the other side of the train tracks. And I don't see why that would go to Federal Hill and the West End, which is more in this area right here.
Thank you, Matt. Madam Clerk, I know that there might have been a question online, and typically we do not allow audience members online to respond, but I think I'll make an exception this evening, since this is a very important evening.
So Michelle, I have allowed you to speak. Just please state your name and address for the record. And if you'll be speaking about a specific map, let me know and I'll put that up.
Michelle Zabrowski, Ward 15, Barstow Street. I'm not exactly sure which map it would be consisted of, but we have Rising Sun Mills on Valley Street. We have the Loft Building. On Manton Avenue, we have another building called the Paragon, which is going to have 101 units in there. There's also going to be single-family homes built between Delane Street and Cutler, which is another 38 single-family homes, which those people do not represent the community at all. When it comes to the ward breakdown, someone can ask Michael Carrera, because I believe he's there and knows what happened to Ward 6 the last time that they did this stuff. Also, are we taking into consideration, since COVID wants to be used as such an excuse, Providence lost 2,442 people. We're trying to build up the community, get information to you. We're giving questions, we're sending emails, but we are not getting answers back. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. For the record, Providence gained almost 13,000 population between 2010 and 2020.
And COVID started in the very first part of 2020, and they haven't finished the census.
They did complete the census now.
But at the same time, many of those.
I need to know
people
who's
died in
speaking.
the-
You got to state your name for the
You have
record,
to state
please.
your name for the record, ma'am.
If I may,
Of course.
I've been on the city council 16 years. I know what happened in Ward 6 back 10 years ago. And I think that's why we're having the process we're having now on the new ward boundaries moving forward. So everybody has an input, and it's not just, I'll use a number, 5 or 6 people making the final decisions of how our city was going to be cut up. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair, so much for serving and for being a part of
Madam
this
Chair,
process.
there's a lady in the back.
You can come forward. Yes, you have to come forward and tell us your name and your address.
Come
And
on
if
down.
you're gonna talk about a specific map, please.
Michelle Davis. I'm in the Mount Hope neighborhood. Once again, good to see all of you again.
Good to see you.
Councilman Yaduchi, how are you?
Good, Michelle. How are you?
Good. Now, you said, you knew what happened in Ward 6 in 2010. For those of us who are kind of not familiar with it, can you explain what happened?
Well, just briefly, not to get into it, because like I said, it was 10 years ago, but there was certain schools cut out of Ward 6, community centers, playgrounds, and stuff like that.
Okay. Now, the last time, couple of days from this, I was told that there was a special vote because there had to be a certain criteria for certain people to vote for certain people. Is that what's happening now because the wards were changed? I mean, I understand redistricting, but it was for a certain racial balance. Is that what we're still looking at here in Providence?
I'm not sure we understand your question.
Okay, one of the representatives, when I raised a question about redistricting, redlining and all that, a representative came in and said, well, you know, we had to have a special vote in order for one of the people, Tiara Matt, to get in office because it was they needed a special racial balance. So, yeah, that's what I was told. So I'm just wondering, is that what we're doing here now? Has that been decided? Is that what we're doing here now?
So to clarify, that is a state boundary.
Mhm.
This is just for city boundaries.
Okay, city
So,
boundary.
so actually on this map right here, has the state lines that go through Providence.
Mhm.
So in addition to all of our criteria, we have to ensure that we also are thinking about where the state district boundaries are. So not only do we have elected officials in city hall, but we also have our elected officials in the General Assembly.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
understand
the District 6 was a contested district for state senate, yes. And it had been changed based on legal ruling to ensure that it could maximize a seat for Black voters. So yes, that is the.
Okay, is that what we're also considering here again for the city award? That's the question.
Yes, so one of the 6 criteria.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Chair. One of the 6 criteria we have in the charter that is for this committee is to ensure that we maintain the Voting Rights Act, meaning that we do not intentionally discriminate against a group of voters. So as Ryan has stated in previous meetings, and actually at the bottom of all of the maps here, talks about the districts that have majority or plurality of racial groupings of the new wards, because it's important that we take that into consideration.
So, I guess I'm looking at the balance. Some of the balance, it doesn't seem that everything is balanced. With the numbers, you know, like the young lady said back there, 2020 census, the census really weren't completed because of COVID. Has that margin changed? Have you considered that? Have the numbers been changed due to the COVID fact that people have not, everyone hasn't been counted? I'm sorry, possibility that everyone hasn't been counted.
The city of Providence has not contested any of the census counts to my knowledge. That wouldn't be our committee. I believe that would be the planning department, maybe the law, maybe the law department might know more than that, but I do not believe that anyone has contested the Providence count, especially since we know that we did grow more than what had been inspected. We had about, I want to say 40% of the, I think it was about 40% of the state growth was in Providence. About 40,000 people statewide, and then we had almost 13. Yeah.
I don't, off the top of my head, I don't know, but like 10 years ago, there was a visible decrease in Providence's population with the state as compared to South County. This year, total reverse. Bunch of, the focus of growth in the state was Providence, Kentucky, Central Falls. At the expense of the more rural parts of the state. So Providence did grow with this new sector.
All right, cool.
Thank you, Michelle. I think I saw, yes, Councilman
So, my name is Michael Carrera. I'm councilman of Ward 6. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but since my neighborhood has been brought up. Started off pretty good at the beginning of the meeting of what happened 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I didn't agree to what was going on after the maps come out. And then at the 11th hour, they decided that they were going to come up with a new map of their own. And what they did is they took a Pac-Man like here out of Ward 6. They took George West Park, the community police substation, George West Elementary School, as well as the Mount Pleasant Fire Station, and just about every other public space that was available to the residents of Ward 6. And unfortunately, for the last 10 years, the neighborhood has suffered by not having a neighborhood park, a neighborhood school, a neighborhood fire station. But most importantly, for the last 10 years, when everybody had to go and vote, we had to go to another ward to vote. We had to go to Ward 15 to vote. We had to go to Ward 5 because there was no public place for the residents of Ward 6, not even a polling place. So I want to thank the committee for this open process and everything that you've done so far. It's been fair. I'm not going to speak to one particular map, but there's several proposals up here that would restore back to the residents of Ward 6 their neighborhood. Okay, it's not about me. Okay, it's about the neighborhood giving back the residents of Ward 6 what they deserve, because I'm term limited. So I just want to give back to the residents what they deserve and what was taken away from them. And whatever map that this committee passes out, there's several good proposals here that would restore that to the neighborhood. But then the bottom line, it lies on the third floor of the city council, my council colleagues, whether or not what they're going to do, what map they're going to accept, or if they're going to make their own changes, like what happened 10 years ago. Hopefully that doesn't happen. And we give back my neighborhood and make it a fair process throughout the entire city. So again, I want to thank the committee, all the committee members and my colleagues. Thank you very much, and hopefully we'll do what's right. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilman.
They come up with a different map. They don't represent.
I think I saw a few more hands. Anyone else like to speak this evening? Sir, come up, state your name, your address, and which map you're going to talk about.
Actually, I'm going to talk more about the process. Randall Gary, 20th Street.
Over here.
With the mask on, or should I take it off?
Oh, can you
I
come?
think you can come
I'm
to
talking that thing.
the microphone. Please.
Yeah. Please, I can't hear that well. See, that's my friend. I can tell him so.
Okay.
Thank you.
I remember 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and I remember 30 years ago, and way back when, speaking of downtown was not in Ward 1. It was only when Seth Reardon became council in Ward 1 that he wanted downtown. So suddenly downtown became part of Ward 1. There are different parts of downtown, and some parts of downtown are connected to Federal Hill. Some parts of downtown are connected to the Upper South Province, or the planning department calls it. Some parts of downtown are connected to the east side. So I think we need to look at it from that lens, and the lens is a land use lens. And this process has been sort of the reverse process of what I would have liked to see. And we got the census numbers, what? A year and a half ago. Like a thought, we were started with the city and then grown to the state. But no, we did it the other way around. I asked for a simple map of the 2 congressional districts, seeing we got to keep our 2 congressional districts, thankfully. With the old map from 14 years ago with the new numbers from now. And the consulting firm that has been doing this for the state of Rhode Island for the last 30 years couldn't come up with it. They just couldn't come up with it. They could come down to the granular level, to use their word, but they couldn't come up with a simple line. The reason I wanted that line was because up until 10 years ago, the line separating the 1st congressional district and the 2nd congressional district went up the Providence River and then angled off to the northwest, deviating from the Mashasset River, and then followed its way up through Blackstone Valley to Massachusetts. But 10 years ago, former mayor, current council, current congressman decided to want a whole chunk of Providence that never existed in the 1st congressional district before. So that rearranged life everywhere else. My sense was that this time around, the numbers were the exact opposite. That the 1st district had more population growth, the 2nd district had less. And so what I wanted to see was, okay, if we went back to the map prior to what we're living under right now, well, and looked at that with the current numbers, how close would we be to 50-50 even Steven? Could never get it. Never get it. But as it turns out, I was right. And we could have gone back to that map, which was the map that we lived with for 200 years. But no, we didn't do that. So now we got that map in there, and now we have the Senate and House district maps in there, and now we're left with us. I still
You've come
want
up by
to see
3
it.
minutes.
I apologize.
Thank you.
I still want to see us look at it from a land use perspective, because for me, that makes the most sense. And and so I commend you for having a serious meeting. Good luck on Wednesday. By the way, I'm not a fan of Zoom. There's so many problems with Zoom. There's so many other services that we could use besides Zoom. So for future reference, let's look at other services. Zoom has a terrible time with audio. Some people come in loud and clear, other people sound like they're mumbling. And so some people sound like they're quiet. So anyway, I'd like to suggest and recommend, if you look at it from a land use perspective, so grow this map organically. And so I commend you for your work and your efforts. Oh, one last question. We got to do it in time for, all the filings and the declarations, the office, running for office in time for this election season. But I would think that if we decide, after the election season is over, that, we should make some corrections there. I would think we could do that. No, we can't. You can't. This is in stone for 10 years?
Once it's submitted, it is in stone for 10 years, yes.
I mean, we have to follow the numbers, but we can't, decide that, we'd like to make these lines a little more logical. We can't do that. Well, that's interesting.
No, once it's voted on and passed, you got 10 years. So with that being said, I'd just like to thank you for your input.
Well, then what that means is the time is constrained, and it's not the fault of the city, it's the fault of the state.
And just so you know, our friends up at the state reps and senators have already passed their redistricting.
I understand that, but I didn't think that was, that couldn't be.
Hey, you bet. Okay.
I believe that I haven't seen any more hands from the audience. I think the committee has a couple of folks. Councilman Arvici, did you have a statement to make?
No.
I think Councilman Harris and maybe Member Freeman.
No, we were just saying that at the end of the day, we're hoping that this process will, we're not going to be able to please everybody. It's really impossible to please everyone. But we are hoping that we did the best we could with this process going forward. Because for me, excuse me, for me to sit on this committee, it was really, really important that this happened, that you have the opportunity and we follow the community, listen to the community, simply because we understood that the last time these things came at us super quick without as much input. Every voice that's been able to give input to what this map should be have been something that we've been listening to and talking about among ourselves, how important that is to try to capture. You're not going to capture everything. We all are different, and we all have different interests according to our neighborhoods, right? And so I'm hoping that at the end of the day, that you continue to follow us, continue to work with us, continue to voice whatever you have to voice, because I think that's important for me to be able to hear that. And I'm sure the rest of my colleagues feel the same way, because this conversation was very, very strong among us before you guys came along about the past, about the historical traumatizing of our neighborhoods, right? We had this deep conversation. So I'm hoping at the end of the day that we can work together to try to figure out where's the common ground, where neighborhoods can have the things they need in it. Councilman Correa's neighborhood should have community centers and all of that. We should consider where people have been spending their time and building their neighborhoods. We should consider all of that. And I'm hoping that's where we are in our deep conversations. And I'm hoping that, at the end of the day, the process itself that we have been trying to take you through have been different. That's all I wanted, was something different. And Councilwoman Miller, you always make that speech. I didn't want to say anything about how this is different. I want you to do it because you've been doing it all the time. And no, she does it so well. Okay. And so, yeah, this is really, really important that we take this serious.
So I would just echo everything Councilwoman Harris said so much. I mean, I think having the people participate in this process for the first time tonight or over and over again is the whole heart of it. And that for the very first time through this redistricting process, we have someone who's not an elected official, in fact, two people, one of whom is the chair, who are helping to lead this committee. And so that's never happened before in Providence. I think it's been a really powerful way to move the process forward. And I want to thank our chairwoman and Member Freeman, both for participating and for sort of helping be that bridge to residents as well. So thank you.
I think other people already said it all. I hope you saw I've been taking notes, other meetings where I've been zooming in. I'm taking notes. I'm building a whole spreadsheet of everybody's comments here and trying to inform myself. There was a lot of really good discussion today, things to think about. I guess the analogy I'd just leave you all with is what my wife said to me when I was trying to describe this process. She says, once you start pulling a thread on a sweater, it starts getting tight in certain places and starts getting loose in others. And we're trying to find a way to pull on these threads, but end up with a sweater we can all still wear comfortably in the end. So thank you for your input. Thank you for helping us do this. I've got a lot to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I'd like to call the meeting to a close. Madam Clerk?
Madam Chair.